Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Wrong Idea. In case you're unfamiliar, being wrong is about embracing subjective experience over objective truth. We're not interested in being correct, we just want to explore our own insights and opinions. I'm Jack, hanging out with my brother Lucas, and today we're joined by our first guest, my friend Danny. How you doing?
What up?
Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and join us.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, this week I wanted to bring you on because I know that all three of us share something in common. We've all done forms of fighting, martial arts, at some point in our lives.
Indeed, we have. I'm curious to know specifically, Danny, what got you interested in fighting to begin with?
So, funny story. So, I have ADHD, or technically ADD, but they combine it, whatever. But so my parents didn't like. It's kind of a sad story, but they didn't really want to deal with me all the time, and I had too much energy as a kid. So they put me and my brother in martial arts because they knew if my older brother did it, I would do it, and I'd be fine. So we would just do that, and then we made it a thing, and then we do boys' night after. But it really just sort of happened to be what I was doing at the time.
What was the first one you did? Was it karate that you still do now?
Yeah, I've been there since I was 5.
Did you find that that worked well for you? Like, did it keep you engaged or give you a way to, stay active?
I mean, yeah, because I would just, like, run around and goof off with the instructor for, like, 30 minutes to an hour once a week, which was so hype. I just, like, had the time of my life in there. And then they switched locations, and then there was a new instructor and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, it kept me very entertained, but I only really got, like, serious about it and, like, actually wanted to learn when I was around, like, 8.
Okay, what was the motivating factor there?
I was just like, "Oh, this is actually kinda cool. We're doing stuff other than just running around and tackling each other. So, how about I just, like, learn this because 'cause I'm not doing anything else and it's more interesting than math class."
I mean, I think it's fun because we all started out at the very least doing karate because Lucas, you and I went to the same studio to do our karate, and then Annie, what was the martial art that you took up after karate?
Or after karate, it was wrestling because I just did karate till or I'm still in karate, but I did karate, like, alone until freshman year of high school, and then I cut down to, like, 1 or 2 lessons a week, and I would spend all my days in practice in the wrestling room.
What did you find was the biggest difference in the way you had to approach wrestling?
Oh, well, first of all, we're running, like, 3 miles ish a day, and then you're also burning over, like, 2,000 calories in a practice, and you're losing, like, 3, 4 pounds per practice if you're really trying. So, it's like the intensity's way higher. You're actually there because you want to be there and not because my parents told me to. And also, it was like you're part of a family there because everyone on the team plays a certain role depending on their weight and whatever. And it was just like a much more tightly knit group than in karate because there's group classes, but you're just sort of like there with them and then you leave and go home and do your own thing.
Yeah, have you found that you've been able to build more relationships in karate over time? Or, I mean, because I can definitely see how in a wrestling situation, like, that definitely feels more tight knit, but hopefully you'd be able to, if you're still doing it, I assume that you've found some kind of place that feels comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, my current girlfriend and I, like, we originally met at this karate studio, in a group class together, which I find is very intriguing, funny.
I didn't even know that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. Back in, I think, 8th grade.
Oh, wow, it's a long time ago. Because you two only started dating not too long ago.
Oh yeah, it's been, I think, 4 months ish.
Oh,
Yeah.
In my mind, when you guys fight, it actually escalates to physical fighting.
That would be funny. We do wrestle from time to time. Whenever we go to the beach, I tend to tackle her, and she's like, "Why did you do that, Danny?" I was like, "'Cause why not? Like, it's sand. It's not gonna hurt that much."
how many friends do you still have from the wrestling team?
Oh, basically all of them. I mean, the people that I were or that I was friends with, I'm still friends with, but the people that I was, like, sort of friends with because I was on the team with them, not so much. And also I have class with 1 to three wrestlers, so I'm still close with them.
Yeah, and I know you still support the team. You'll make you throw up a post every once in a while when they have duels or meets and whatnot. But it's cool to see that you still support the program.
Oh yeah, I love it, and I wish I could go back, but I kind of need a job and whatnot. And also, there's a little problem with me and the coach, and a whole little bit of drama.
It's interesting because you had a completely different relationship with the wrestling coach than your like karate instructor, didn't you?
Well, yeah. For one, my wrestling coach taught me how to go in and fight and go to war with another dude on a mat wearing tights for 3 minutes or 3 to 6 minutes, like a minimum of like 6, 7 times a week. And my martial arts coach is just like, yeah, let's like hit them there, like it's a totally different vibe.
Well, yeah, I think your objectives are definitely different. I would imagine that I guess learning martial arts typically is a there are a number of reasons that you might be doing it, but self-defense is obviously a big part of it. Hopefully, you're never having to use that stuff, but then also, like, the discipline involved, but I guess, like, the point is maybe that there's the intent differs completely. In wrestling, you're, like, trying to get into the fights and win them. I think with martial arts, you typically want to avoid fights as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure. So in or we do like defense maneuvers or whatever, and they always start where you're moving, or 90% of them start where you're moving backwards, and most of them, or the whole goal of them, is to incapacitate the person who's attacking you. But in wrestling, you're forced into the fight, and if you go out of bounds, you're put back in to the same position that you started. If not, you're at a disadvantage or they're at a disadvantage. So it's just like a completely different style.
Which one do you think is more applicable? Because I think that it's situational, of course, but like if you got into a street fight, where do you think your instincts would go to? Do you think you would go to the karate and the BJJ or the wrestling?
Probably karate, just because I don't necessarily find it fun to go to the ground, at least on pavement. But if it does go to the ground, which most street fights would. I'm probably pulling out the wrestling.
Yeah, once you're on the ground, I think that's when you're like, "Okay, it's time to get a hold and just, you know, stop them from doing anything else. Just incapacitate completely."
Yeah, or I'll somehow just grab a hold of them and then throw them or whatever, and that's when the wrestling BJJ come out.
I wanna jump to this concept of kind of the mindset that you get into when you are fighting. Like, I think learning to fight, learning to master the techniques and all the forms. Obviously, I'm talking much more from the karate side at this point, but how do you feel that you are able to get in that mindset and that focus zone, and like how does it help to be more mindful during practice?
Mhm. So for karate, or actually, it's sort of a side note. So people with ADHD, they can focus a lot better when they're working on their balance, and when they have good balance, it's so much easier to focus and concentrate. So that really helped me focus while we were doing karate. So I would just like balance a little bit. But when we would fight at karate, we're wearing headgear and gloves and sometimes shin guards. Or recently it's shin guards because they started adding like Muay Thai and stuff and leg kicks.
Rough.
It's actually really fun, at least in my opinion. But so it's like it's a more chill environment. I mean, when I was sparring with my instructor earlier, we did one round we did a total of 3 rounds, and the first one I had to only defend. He was only attacking. He was like kind of light, just going through it, and then we switched roles, and then after that it was just straight, just regular light sparring. But it's just like the environment is so much more chill in the karate studio than it is in the wrestling room. So like, for example, during season in the wrestling room, or one day it was raining outside and it was super cold or whatever, and it got so hot in the wrestling room that people started to steam, which I think is really cool. A lot of the kids weren't steaming because it was cold and it was raining, and a lot of kids didn't want to do it. But I was steaming. And I thought that was really cool. And me and the heavyweight were chilling, steaming. But so in the wrestling room, everyone is there because they want a spot on varsity, and they're always competing. But in karate, you're competing against yourself, so there's not as much drive, I would say. Then again, in wrestling, you're going into a fight. Like this is, or what my coach told me, word for word, is this is the closest thing that you're gonna get to a real fight that is sanctioned by your school. So I just think that's the completely different, or the difference in the ideology.
Fair enough. I actually like that you framed it as kind of this difference between where your internal and external motivations are coming from. And I do think that's fair. You know, when you're learning a martial art, it's definitely this journey for yourself that you're trying to improve and get better, but it's not as competitive as, you know, on being on a wrestling team actually having to win matches.
Yeah. And also there's the weight aspect to where you need to make a certain weight, or in JV for us there wasn't a weight requirement. I mean there's still weight classes, but like on the team no one really cared where you wrestled. You just sort of, if you wanted to lose weight, you just wrestled a little harder out of practice or whatever. But me personally, I took it a little too far, and I would cut weight as if I was on varsity, which is like you're water loading and then you're losing all the water and you're not eating that much. I think the most I lost in 24 hours was like 17 and a half pounds. And that
Holy
was,
cow.
yeah, it was,
Pardon, huh?
yeah, I wrestled so bad the next day. It was horrendous. And my coaches were like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, this, you're actually an idiot. And I was like, yeah, you're 100% right. But yeah, it's just the weight cuts make it way more competitive. And also that you need that there's okay, so there's 13 spots in the bracket, and realistically in high school you can't cut that much weight and you can't gain that much weight that quickly. So there's really only like three-ish spots for you.
That is ridiculous. That's what I love about boxing because I've never like I've done it competitively, but for the long time that I've done it, I've always enjoyed the fact that I can kind of just, like go to my whatever, maybe a class, or now that I have a personal trainer and I box with him, I can just, go have fun, get my exercise, not worry so much about my weight class. If I ever was to fight amateurly, I would for sure have to cut the weight. But it's one thing that I so appreciate because it feels quite low pressure, which is probably like one of the reasons that you've stuck with karate for so long. Because when you have that low pressure environment to kind of just enjoy it, get the whatever, maybe you have some anger out you want to get out, or even just one thing that I think fighting does for a lot of people is it helps you develop confidence. Fighters can walk around with an aura to them that is like, yeah, you don't want to mess with me. It's gonna be bad for you.
Yeah, I heard a quote the other day, or it was along the lines of the kid who is willing to fight on the schoolyard won't be messed with, but the kid who is not willing to fight but can fight will be messed with.
It's probably true. I mean, you never see even like, the fat kid who's gonna get, punched in the face, but then punches back will not get punched anymore. But, people will pick fights with anybody who can. If anything, they find some fun about trying to pick a fight with someone who knows how, because if they can upset them, well, what do you do? I beat a fighter. But if not, they should have won anyways, whatever.
Yeah.
There's another funny thing because Lucas, I've talked to you about this a couple of times. There's so many more fights at school now than there were a long time ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't even remember like, maybe a couple of fights that I even recall, but it sounds like you're seeing them all the time. I mean, I wasn't paying attention or like whatever, but it sounds crazy now.
Funny story. I was sitting in flex time today, and there were these two kids that just started swinging. I was like, "Oh, sick! Another day."
What? This is the crazy stuff.
Yeah, they were also like throwing up gang signs and stuff. They're like completely messing around. I thought it was hilarious.
This is the crazy stuff which happens in our generation now, Lucas. How does it feel to look down on this?
I mean, at least I could say it would have been more entertaining than what I went through. Danny, what is your intent in terms of do you want to keep going with martial arts or wrestling or anything even along these lines? Are there things that you want to be learning next?
So yeah, actually one of my requirements for when I go off to college is I need a collegiate wrestling, jujitsu, and rugby teams all at the same college that I'm gonna go to. So I would very much so like to at least go to practices and stuff in college and just like get back into that. But if I had the opportunity to join the wrestling team again at high school or at the high school level, I would love to, although I probably am not as good as I was back then just because of my weight class and whatever, and I've gained a bunch of weight. But yeah, I definitely would like to pursue it and keep going. Although for karate, once I get my black belt, which I'm a second degree brown belt, so I'm two-ish belts off from getting my black belt, I'm gonna switch to raw BJJ because I just love it so much more.
What about it?
Or it's just like ever since I was little, I would always try and wrestle my parents. Just like whether I just need to get some energy out or whatever. But I thought it was really fun. But it's just like it makes me so much happier than a striking martial art just because you're close up with someone. It's basically just like an aggressive hug, and it's way more personal. You get to learn on the fly, and you can stop it if need be. Like there are major injuries that happen fast, but it's less common. Also, I feel like people are a lot more respectful when I have dropped into certain BJJ classes, and everyone's super nice, at least for the most part, or what I've experienced.
That's pretty interesting. It reminds me, I went to some Aikido classes at one point, and that actually appealed to me quite a bit, kind of for similar reasons. I know what you're saying about the impact, like striking forms, because it can be kind of a lot, and it's just a different approach. I feel like with some of these jujitsu and aikido and whatever and judo, whatever else, there's sort of a different mentality around what you're doing, and I'm wondering if that translates too, because as you said in those classes, you felt just a different kind of discipline. I felt that as well in the aikido classes.
Hmm. Yeah, my friend Charlie, he did Aikido, and also my grandparents did Aikido. They were like 60 when they did it, which is really cool.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. But anyways, so all the people I know that did Aikido, they're like, "Oh yeah, it was super fun." But it's also, from what I hear, it's way less intense. It's more like, "Oh, let's do this, let's do that, let's try this, let's do a different angle." It's like the difference between wrestling and BJJ.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much just this idea of transferring energy, moving the energy around, like, finding the right way to do all the throws and kind of stuff like that. I always found cool. But that's actually why, as you say, like doing it when you're older, it seems like you might not be able to do some of that stuff, but the whole point is that you're learning how to transfer that energy. So it's actually like you can still get a lot done despite being, you know, up there in age.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. Same thing with judo as well. So in the karate studio that I'm at, we also learn like a little bit of judo, like a hip toss and whatever. But I just always found it funny how like you just pick someone up like that. But yeah, no, you're totally right. It's definitely, I feel like Aikido is definitely oriented towards older people just because of how like the movement of energy and stuff works in that discipline.
I want to ask you a question because one thing that I think fighting does is it gives you this different view on like fear as a whole. I'm sure you know that before you go into, when you were wrestling, before you go into a match, there's nerves and there's fear and there's excitement that all build up inside you before you get in. So, how did you deal with those because it's different from person to person?
Hmm. So, you know the headphones that I wear at school?
Oh, do I? The craziest bass out of any headphones I've ever heard.
Yup. So I would go to tournaments with those headphones on, noise canceling, which kind of caused a little bit of issues because I couldn't really hear the coach, but a teammate would get me and whatever. But I would just be playing music, and I had music for when I was not wrestling, when I was up next, and like when I was almost, or like, so there's the time period between matches which is a minimum of 45 minutes. And then after that, your free game, whatever, they'll call you or whatever to your next match. But during those 45 minutes, I would just like hang out, just chill. Most of my nerves were gone. It was really only when I was like on the mats to where I would get a little bit nervous. And even then, I was like, it really, what psyched me out the most was how big the guy was, which is really just not important at all in wrestling because the more jacked someone looks, the worse they are at wrestling, which is so funny. It's honestly like a proven fact. If you watch college wrestling or high school wrestling, even, but I would blast music in my ears and then I would take them off, put on my headgear, and hop on the mat, shake the dude's hand, and go at it. But there wasn't much like fear. I I mean, I practice every day pretty hard. I mean, there were some days where I would slack off, of course. But for the most part, I practiced really hard and I felt like I put in the work to wrestle at the level that I was at, which I wrestled JV, like high-ish level JV. The schools that I wrestled were pretty good. And I felt pretty well prepared. I mean, sometimes when I would cut too much weight or whatever, and be a dumbass, I would feel like shit and I wouldn't be able to wrestle very well. That's why I don't have many medals, is because I would cut so much weight and I just wouldn't be able to make it 7+ matches. I I think, or I have one bracket and like a fifth place medal, and that's it. Like I was a 2 round Tony, and that was it.
Two round Tony is hilarious. I mean, do you think that if you wouldn't have taken it to that extreme, you would have like still done wrestling for now? Because I think that you said that you enjoyed the hard work. There's a reason that you stick with it, but like if you wouldn't have taken it to that extreme, would you still want to wrestle?
Oh yeah, 100%. One of the big reasons why I left the team was because I took myself back a little bit. I was like, "Hey, realistically, can my body handle that again?" And my answer was just like, "No, I don't think that I can do that for another year." By the way, I broke my collarbone, or I fractured my collarbone in the first live practice, or like where we're actually wrestling, in my freshman year. And then the second day that I came back after that injury, I fully broke my collarbone. So my first year gone. My first time like actually really wrestling people was over summer at a wrestling camp, which was pretty cool. We wrestled for like 6 hours a day. It was awesome.
So I'm the only one here who hasn't broken my collarbone.
That's true.
Damn. All right. No, this is a rite of passage. Okay, it's my mission for 2024. I gotta break a collarbone doing something. So this is another thing that I want to touch on is injuries. I have horrible wrist problems from boxing, but I've never talked to you, Lucas, about this. Did you ever get injured when you were doing karate?
No, I was never doing anything so intense that it like really injured me.
What about you, Danny?
Oh, the I have many injuries from wrestling. I think like I don't think I ever got injured from karate. I got hurt a lot.
Yeah, that's what I was feeling too. I was like, injured? I don't know. Hurt? Yes.
Yeah, like the other day I got hit in the kidney. I was like, "Hey, I need a second. Let me just lay down." No, I literally just like, "Hey, stop. I'll be going down." But in wrestling, I had a lot of injuries. I had a major concussion, which I was concussed for approximately a month.
Holy!
Yeah, it was horrible. It's like you're living life in third person. You feel like hungover to a certain extent and just like loopy, but you feel off at the same time. Like you don't feel good, but like you're just like, haha, and you just can't focus. Like me personally, with my dyslexia and ADHD, I can barely read already, and that just put me over. I was just like, my English teacher and like all my teachers were like, "Hey guys, reading not a thing right now. I'll let you know when I'm back." But that was probably my worst injury. That ended my final season. That was my last match in wrestling ever. It was I think it was my first match on varsity, and then I came back and wrestled varsity over summer. Or no, it wasn't my first match on varsity, but it was my first match in a dual wrestling varsity because the alt got sick and I was still wrestling JV at the time. Wasn't great, but I mean, I kept my shit together and wrestled for a solid 4 or 5 minutes and fought, and then he hit me with a blast double, a great blast double. I was out of position. It was horrible, and then my head, or he knocked the wind out of me, and then my head hit the ground, and for another like 10 seconds, I don't remember it, and then I got up, shook his hand, couldn't breathe, and I was holding my head. Walked off the mat and was like, "Hey, good job, man. You definitely you did well." And then almost fell asleep on the mat, and then went home and was like, "Guys, I think I got a concussion." But the collarbone, the first time I broke it or fractured it, I was like, I heard a crack, but it was like it wasn't like a halfway through fracture. It was like a quarter of the way through. So like I would feel it and I'll be like, "Ooh, that's a little that hurts a little bit." And then I would like move my arm and I'd be like, "Oh, that hurts." And then I went down to the trainer and she was like, "Oh, you should be fine." And then we went to the doctor and they were like, "Oh, you fractured this." And I was like, "Oh shit. Okay." So then I was in a sling for like 3 months, or I think it was, yeah, 9 weeks. And then I came back so excited. I loved wrestling so much. Still do, but like not to that extent, dude. I'm at like a 9 now. That was at a 10. I was like obsessed. And so I came back second day. I get taken down, but my friend Calvin, he was on the team at the time, and he covered, which is basically when you take someone down, you're supposed to land on them. And he covered, and it broke all the way through. And
Oh.
I was like, "Ah, fuck." I was like, "Hey, coach, it's broken." He was like, "What?" I was like, "Oh, my collarbone." And he was like, "How do you know?" I'm like, "Dude, it's just broken." Like, I was so sad. I was like ready to cry. I was like, "No, I've been wanting to wrestle so badly because I never wrestled a match. I barely wrestled live." And it was just like a whole thing. And I really, really wanted to wrestle. And I was horrified. And it's like, ah, fuck, no, not again. And then this time was way worse in terms of pain. I was writhing in pain. I was just clenching my jaw on the way to the doctor, and then they gave me an X-ray, and they were like, "Yeah, that's pretty broken." And it was basically, it was like it was broken for sure. There was a little bit of a shatter, like to where it broke, and there's still some pieces that are hanging around. But also now, so one of my tendons that used to go, or I think it's always been over my collarbone. I don't know. It's messed up after that. It grew over, and now whenever I hit chest at the gym, I have to stretch my neck and put pressure on the tendon to stretch it back. Yeah, it's just really weird. I'm like, huh, how did this happen? And I only like noticed it. Yeah, I only noticed it after I broke it the second time.
I was gonna say it evidently doesn't hold you back when we're working out because are an absolute maniac.
Yeah. Or if you see me, I'll like stretch. I'll like put pressure on it and stretch in between sets and whatnot. But like if it hurts, I immediately stop because I'm so worried that something might happen. It might get worse. Yeah, it's just very scary because the like it was lightly traumatizing. I use that in a bad sense, but or in a not a great way, but I was like a little horrified when I fully broke it. So it's a little scary to be like, oh, okay, we're done.
That's intense, dude. Like, I know what you mean. I When I broke mine, it wasn't nearly that bad, but I know the kind of pain you're talking about, and I know what you mean when you say like it's a lot to go through. So yeah, I mean, to do that twice in a row too, like to fracture it and then break it, like that's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, I had some doubts the second time that I would come back, but towards the end, or like when you wrestle and then you stop wrestling, you like you get withdrawals, like the same that you would from like a drug for wrestling. It's so weird. I think it's called fighter's withdrawal or something. I don't know. But you just like you feel like shit. You just hit a wall of depression and you're like, "Oh my god, I need this again." And it's just so weird and you just don't know what it is, and then you finally figure it out. And I was like, "Oh, I need to go back."
Yeah. There are definitely things that are, you get into these mental states where you're like, where you really enjoy something. Like you said, you were at like a 10 when you're doing it.
Mhm.
It's like when you find something like that, I feel like you are driven to continue doing it. You want to do anything in your power to keep doing that thing.
Yeah, it was kind of funny though because when I was the most obsessed, I was, or I wouldn't say the worst I was, or like that was the worst I ever was at wrestling, but like I was pretty shit when I was that obsessed. Like I was nowhere making varsity. I just sort of wrestled tournaments and just like won matches, and then I would lose, and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, we're going home." But like I was never obsessed with like winning and losing, or I was obsessed with winning, but I wasn't horrified when I lost. Besides this one time at a duel meet against Redondo.
That's interesting because you do bring up a good point around the intensity of the emotion, but then the mindset that you have, because that they do need to be aligned for that to go well. You don't want to be in a place where you're not in a good mindset, but strong intensity of emotion because it can sort of do what you said, get you to that like obsessive state.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually what made me lose that match against the Redondo kid. Because I was so freaked out because the coach was hyping up the duel and was like, "Hey guys, we win this, we're the best in the league, and we'll go right to the next level beyond league super easily." But then everyone lost their match, or like we lost the duel tremendously because of how hyped up it was, and everyone was like had so much nerves, and that like I listened to music that brought me back to memories that I probably shouldn't have brought back. And it was just a bad decision in all the way that I prepared. I cut a shit ton of weight and then I ate a bunch of pasta right before, which tasted amazing. Don't get me wrong. By the way, it's like a 2 pound tub of pasta. It was awesome.
That's impressive to an Italian, man.
Yeah, when you cut like 3 pounds morning of, and then like 9 the night before. It was tough. Like all I wanted was food. I was chewing gum on the way there. I was like, oh my god, am I gonna make weight? Am I gonna make weight?
Whether or not this rounds us off or takes us into another rabbit hole, I wanna touch on it because I think something interesting is that the more you fight and the more experience you have, you sort of develop this philosophy towards it, which sort of blends into the rest of your life because it's a very, it's a disciplined thing. It's you have to be very dedicated, you have to be very consistent. But like what aspects of fighting have you noticed have like bled into like the rest of your life and your habits and your tendencies?
So working out for sure has been affected by wrestling. The intensity that I work out at had actually gave me hemorrhoids. Um, like pretty bad hemorrhoids.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was bad. Also, in the wrestling world, a lot of wrestlers who are either not wrestling or still wrestling, they always say once you do wrestling, everything is easy. And I kind of walk that way throughout my life now since wrestling because I'm like, holy shit, I like cut weight, I fought day of, I did one of the hardest combat sports there ever has been, and I'm still here. Like that's sick. And I'm just like, I take on a new level of motivation every day, and I push myself to be greater than how I was when I was in karate, or like when I was just in karate.
I like that mentality. I think that feeling like there's nothing you can't accomplish. Like I know where you're coming from in the sense that you've been through something that is that shows you what you're capable of, shows you like the true capacity of a human, and you know that even in those situations, like you can go through a lot of tough stuff but come out strong. So I like that you take that into the rest of your life because I think it will help push you forward when you know that even when you come up against things that you are unsure about, that you haven't seen before, you'll know that you can tackle them.
Yeah, for sure. When I was on the team and we would do running days. We sometimes we did sprints, sometimes we would do like a distance run. But when we did sprints, we did around 4-ish miles of sprinting a day, or on any given sprint day. And many kids throw up, many kids give up, but I prided myself of being one of the kids who would throw up and still keep on going. And now I think back on that and I'm like the shit that I'm going through like today, that's nothing to what I was going through back then. Like I know that I can get past bad shit because I've already been through the shit.
There's 100% that level of like just like batshit craziness which you need to be a good fighter because like there's no way that you can like willingly as like a fully like conscious minded human be like, "Oh yeah, I want to walk into somewhere where I am going to willingly get my ass beat." It's a crazy way to go and to train for it is crazy because I don't even know because I think it just varies person to person, but the training is almost most definitely harder than the fighting itself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, yeah, practice was for sure harder, but that's also because of the frequency that you're practicing and whatnot, and how much time you're spending. And a match in wrestling is for a JV or what I wrestled the most was 3 minutes, with 1 minute periods, 3 periods, and the first period is the only period that you're like starting standing up, or like guaranteed to start standing up, which is the hardest position because you're both even. It's a 50-50 fight. And then you have to make it like 60-40 or like 70-30, and you have to get to certain positions.
I like this notion, but I've always thought about it this way where practice you're sort of pushing yourself and working on the things that you feel you're not good at, and then you can get into these actual matches where you'd find that, oh, someone else is going to show me a limit that I didn't know I had. It's a chance for you to test your limits and then figure out, okay, now I know again where I need to come and improve myself.
Yeah, for sure. When I was in wrestling, I noticed a lot that my cardio was lacking, mainly because I was cutting weight, but also because I just didn't really run enough on my own. Because what we were supposed to do after practice was go and lift, even after lifting during wrestling and whatever we did, like go lift and go run 3 miles at least, or go run for 30-40 minutes. But yeah, so in matches we would figure out what we lacked, but in practice we improved on what we lacked. So it was kind of tough during preseason when you just try and get good at what you know, and then you have to either shift your game entirely or learn new things or learn new techniques and stuff. You can't really perfect things during season. Well, I mean, you always have your bread and butter, but you like learn new things and you don't really get them perfect just because it's season and you're doing shit all the time. But yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying.
I actually love the way you framed that because it reminds me that this applies more broadly in life where you might have certain opinions about what you need to improve on and you might think, "Oh, okay, I'm going to get I'm going to spend all this time and get better at these things." And then you go out into the world and you try to interact with people and you may not get the reactions you expect. And it's because we only see things from our own perspective and we often need to collide with others and see their perspectives to get a sense of a, a better look at ourselves.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I really appreciate that outlook. Yeah, a lot of people that I know are who are not very social people. For example, like when someone practices kissing or whatever, like they don't know how to do it like really until they do it or they get taught how to do it or whatever. But I think that I agree it applies to your whole life and how you can train for something but you don't really know what to do and how to do it until you're there.
This is interesting. I had something happen today which was literally a perfect example of this because this happens all the time. But we were asked to review an essay which we'd written and it's like pick an area for growth or improvement and I'm like, I don't know. I felt good writing the essay, but like you have the rubric. You didn't give me the rubric. So how am I
Mhm.
supposed to know where I need to improve? I felt confident doing basically everything. So, I like you said, you need someone else's, view to come in and look at what you're doing, but I also really like you have to like experience stuff, see what you need to improve upon cuz When I was a racing carts, it was always interesting to see during races where I would tend to have my weaknesses. And I think that you're only really going to be able to target those and improve upon those once you see where they begin to falter, because you can get into these rhythms and practice where it's fairly low stress and you can sort of eliminate those errors. But it's interesting when you're under that pressure and that tension that things will start to crumble, which you may be even good at, because that'll happen from time to time.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's why I love studying perspective and how different people view life, because you as a human being, you only get X, Y, and Z, what you see, your tunnel vision on life. But if you broaden that just a little bit, you get a bigger and more full perception of life. And that comes with being open minded to new ideas. And you just grow so much faster and so much better as a human being when you do that than when you live in confinement in your own ideas and you just sit there and it's just you and you have your beliefs and that's it. But when you grow and get other perspectives, you can grow as a person, as a fighter. You can just grow every aspect of your life.
This is such a powerful concept, and it made me think about this notion that when we have our ideas, our beliefs, and we want to test them in the world, we sort of are metaphorically going into combat. And I think that maybe that's why some of the fighting mentality helps in this in developing this open-mindedness. Because if you go into a fight, you have to be ready for them to do anything. You have to be ready to defend yourself against anything. And in that sense, you learn that even if you believe that you can take someone down, that they may be able to do something that you're not prepared for. And if you apply the same mindset to ideas, you test them out in the world. You throw them out into the world and see how they clash with others and how people respond to them and learn where your ideas might falter where you didn't expect or excel in places you didn't expect.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's very powerful, and I definitely agree with that.
I think that you and me, Danny, because like we're in school, we're in the same place, grade level wise. We have a sort of a benefit as fighters. And I know Lucas, you probably experienced this too when you were back around our age, but having that openness for your mind to be open to criticism or to like other perspectives more broadly gives you a different view on learning, and it really allows you to take in critiques or advice in very deep and insightful ways, and it certainly carries over into all aspects, like you said, Lucas. That fighting mentality carries over in everything, because if you can go into say, just take it for our experience, a test with an open mind, and you can see areas where you typically falter, man, you're gonna find some stuff that you didn't know before, and it gives you such a incredibly powerful tool to learn and better yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Or in my opinion, if you have different perspectives, you can like go about life and hit from different angles, you know? And also I feel like if how fighting helps as well is like the practicing. Like you practice all the time, and if you practice at a certain intensity, you live your life like that. And then you go about it, and then in the workforce when you actually have to work and dedicate time, you're out there and you're noticeable and you're like above. I mean, not like above, I guess.
You're prepared.
Yeah, you're more well prepared because you've always been competing and you know how to compete. And that's kind of how I see the workforce in that sense.
I actually love this. This is such a cool idea because, again, let's come back to this idea of self defense, right? You learn these techniques because you want to be able to defend yourself against any possible attack. So I find that, again, this same mindset, it applies perfectly where if you just are ready to you're ready for any potential attack to your beliefs even is what I'm saying. And if you're ready for that and are willing to accept that and just prepare, prepare mentally, like understand why I believe what I believe, what where are my values coming from? And if you can defend your ideas, your values, then you can help strengthen others and find where your differences are and better yourself at the same time. So I think this whole mentality of, I think, like you said, the practice, the preparation, that's the stuff that is valuable. You're preparing to go out into the world and see what you are capable of.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Actually, I think Jack, you remembered. I wouldn't say it's a phase. I'm like still doing it, but I study all kinds of religion because of the combat of beliefs and how different ideas come together, how there's like Ibrahimic religions and how those are all like they stem from one thing, but they all believe different things. And then sometimes they like combat each other, but like they always just somehow find an equilibrium or a balance between, hey, you have your thing, I have my thing. Like we can discuss, but maybe I won't change. And actually, at my work, there's a one of my coworkers. He brings his Bible to work, and during his breaks, he'll read his Bible. And every day that I work with him, I'm like, "Hey, what's the verse for today?" And then he tells me the verse. And right now, he's reading what is it? It's one of the wisdom chapters, and we just discuss for like 10, 20 minutes about this sentence of wisdom that is from the Christian Bible. And like as someone who's Jewish, it's a whole new perspective on what I believe or what I believed as a kid. I don't really consider myself super religious anymore just because I just feel like there's so many different takes, there's so many different perspectives that there can't just be one. It has to be a mix of everything.
You touched on two things that I love. You said that a lot of these, through your studies, you found that a lot of this is striking a balance, and I think that it's really important to recognize that there are extremes on either end, and neither of them stand to benefit anybody. Too much of something is never good. Finding that balance, finding your sweet spot, is where it's at. And I'll tie this into something else, which is I think that today people are pretty afraid to talk about different ideas, conflicting ideas, opposite ideas, really.
Wrong ideas?
Bingo! There you go. Thanks for finishing my alley oop there. But it's just this fact that people seem to shy away from this. They don't like seeing opposing perspectives. And I think that it's one of the reasons that we're where we are in society today, because people are pretty unwilling to entertain opposing viewpoints because they're so fixated on being right or changing someone's mind. But I think that if people really just, I think you even said this, Denny, you don't have to change, but there's something that I can gain from this. There's a new perspective, there's a new take, there's a new angle I can come at this from. I think that if people could embrace that a lot more, that they would find so much new, wisdom and knowledge and experience.
Yeah, actually, in my friend group at school, one of my friends, he's very, very liberal. He's like, "Oh, you can't make a racist joke or like make racial comments, and like you can't touch on mental illness. You can't say all of this and whatnot." And me and my other friend, we don't really care about social boundaries. We just sort of talk and make jokes. And if one of us crosses the line, we're like, "Hey, I think you crossed the line." And that's just something hurts us personally, which like we never really like spread hate speech. Like we're not negative. We do make some pretty iffy jokes, but at the end of the day, we have a like an agreement, a personal agreement to where we both recognize them as jokes and our perspectives are individual and we can have our own opinion and we're two different people at the same or at the end of the day. And I like totally agree with what you're saying and yeah.
I think diversity of thought is the theme here that I'm really picking up on and I appreciate as well. I do think that it's important to test those limits of what what is acceptable, what we can say, what why we can say these things as well, just because it's, we want to understand what other people are thinking. Why are certain things hurting people? Why are I just want to understand where other people are coming from. Be more empathetic. Be more open to hearing what people think, and that's what I appreciate about what you were saying too. Just listening to pieces from the Bible, even being Jewish, like whatever, just being able to hear something that someone else thinks and explore it with them, even if it's because it doesn't have to be about you need to agree with me. It just has to be about you need to tell me how you feel and what you're thinking.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we've actually gone pretty long here. I'm gonna wrap us up. It's been such a fun discussion, Danny. Thanks for coming on.
No problem. Anytime.
Well, if you guys enjoyed that episode, feel free to check us out at The Wrong Idea on TikTok, Instagram, and X. I'll see you guys next week.
Got a thought that challenges the norm? We want to hear it. Post your wrong idea with the hashtag #WrongIdea. That's RONG idea. And join the conversation. Who knows? Your perspective might just be featured in a future episode. Remember, in a world of endless perspectives, all ideas are wrong ideas. Until next time, keep thinking, keep challenging, and keep embracing the unconventional.